Today we have an iPad 5th generation. It's having issues with charging. So once we put in the charger, it doesn't take any power and doesn't power on, just stays like that. So for this one, it could be two things. It could be just a simple charging port replacement that it needs, or it could also have another thing called TriStar, which is where a chip in the motherboard that doesn't allow it to power on. We'll just try the charging port first and see if that helps it and fixes the issue. So we'll start by removing the 4 screws on the corners of the LCD. One screw that's a little bigger than the other 3, so I like to set them on a certain way. So the one on this corner, top right, is going to be a little bigger, so I just make sure I have them in order, that way I know. Now that we lifted the LCD, we have to remove the battery screw, and then we can take apart the LCD from the motherboard. LCD is out now, so we can see right here we have the connection for the home button and the 2 connections that go for the digitizer. So we're just gonna disconnect them. And then we can put our digitizer aside. So our next step is to take the motherboard out. We have to remove these screws right here, disconnect the camera, rear camera, front camera, disconnect the buttons. Then we go down here, disconnect this antennas right here. On this one, the port was already super loose, so the 2 screws it has on the bottom, they were already out. So I just have them here on the side already. The most difficult part would be just removing the motherboard carefully without damaging it. If you pull it too hard, you can break the motherboard. They're very vulnerable about this part right here. You pull it up with a lot of strength, it's gonna crack right here. Alright, so this is just alcohol. We add some alcohol. It will help loosen the adhesive it has underneath. Now the next step would be just to add some heat. Now we can try and keep lifting it up. So on this one, we're gonna try first and do the charging port. We'll just do some soldering, take this one out, and install a different one and test it and see if that works. If it doesn't work, then it just tells us that this was not the issue. The port was just loose, but it wasn't too loose where it was gonna stop working yet. or if it has a different issue. So to test it, we don't have to connect all the connections. As long as we have the LCD and the battery connected is enough to tell us if it was a success or not. And then we can just apply some pressure or the screw for the battery. So if it were just an issue with the charging port, right here we have this tool that allows us to see if it takes power in. If it was just to be an issue with the charging port, it should be already at 1.15 or so, but it's taking 0 power in. So that indicates that it's not an issue with the charging port, it has something else wrong with it. It might be the charger, so we'll go ahead and try that next.
Lit.
Me trying to get back to the housing.